You watch the incidents which are happening in Bangladesh, the targeting of the Hindu community and the Buddhists too, the vandalizing of temples, and I don't want to go into the details, but you're watching all this. There's one section which feels that it's upon the Hindu community in India to stand by them, to do something. But what can you do actually? You can't do anything. You can raise their voice in the sense in the international community, you can pick it up. So that, like in 1971, when the world didn't care at all, nobody bothered about the Hindu community being killed, raped, their temples being destroyed. At least now the world knows something is happening. That's the only thing we can do. What else can we do?
We thought once the world is apprised of the situation, it will result in action. We stand proven wrong. So it's not about knowledge. It's about the aesthetics of the victim. Hindus don't make for great aesthetic victims.
Aesthetic victims?
Yes, it's not a politically correct cause to support. So you will find Richard Gere supporting Tibetans. How many such people in Hollywood will support the cause of Hindus who are actually being butchered right now?
Not even Hindus.
Exactly.
I haven't heard Sundar Pichai or any of them speaking.
There is a concept of aesthetics of victimhood. Palestinians make for great victims for some sections of the people. We don't. My suggestion is this. You started off by saying, what can Hindus do? Let's turn the question around through a different tone. What can we do? What we lack is non-state international Hindu organizations with the necessary networks and the pull and the pockets to get the job done in the event state actors fail. Or they are, let's say, they're crippled by certain circumstances or considerations. The state of Israel was created through such non-state actors and organizations. They created a state. And they were never more than Hindus in terms of numbers and demographics. Never. By the most conservative estimates, we are anywhere between 800 million to a billion across the world. By the most liberal estimates, they are not more than 1.5, let's say they're about 15 million at best. That's 1.5 crores. What is that population compared to Bharat? They get the job done for their community. They resist, notwithstanding the propaganda and the vitriol that's spewed against them from the 7th of October 2023. They've been doing it. Why can't we? Because this community needs to realize the value of non-state self-reliance, because assuming that there is a change of situation, your priorities still exist, your survival issues still exist, the existential challenges that stare at you still exist. You still need to have a response mechanism. I've said this before, that perhaps what you need is a hard-nosed World Hindu Congress of organizations and, let's say, individuals who can congregate at a certain place, discuss deliverables, and act on those deliverables as opposed to constantly becoming event organizing platforms. Let's assume that I get called or somebody gets called, we'll get more visibility, यहाँ पे 2-3 pictures हो जाएंगे, then Insta पे थोड़ी likes हो जाएंगे, ये सब होगा, मेरी book की और बिक्री बढ़ी, ये सब चलता रहेगा. Has it had a tangible impact on minds? Yes, to some extent. I will not say no to it. I will not underplay it. But is it helping a person who's being butchered? At the end of the day, वही तो test है, वही तो metric है. The sheer futility and uselessness of what I have done became stark when I got messages from the relatives of people suffering there and the people themselves on a repeated basis daily throughout this entire period. Saying, kuch kijiye, kahin to kuch bataiye. For some reason, they labor under the delusion that I have access to higher powers and higher wisdom. I said, mujhe nahi pata. I have no access to anyone. All I can do is air this concern through my platforms. If it gets heard, sure. But ऐसा नहीं है कि मेरे बताए बगैर उनको पता नहीं है. They have access to better sources.
Yes.
तो उसके बावजूद क्या हो रहा है? I can only say, Bharat needs to truly secure this neighborhood and ensure that this neighborhood becomes a safe one for its core identity, which is Sanatana Dharma. You don't need to beat around the bush by calling it civilizational identity. और क्या है? Sanatana Dharma, यही है. China has operated with that particular vision in mind, where the core Chinese heartland or mainland has been protected through creation of multiple buffer regions through annexation. That's what they've done over the years. Outer Mongolia, Inner Mongolia, this and that, and Tibetan Plateau. And China was never meant to be our neighbor. Tibet was meant to be our neighbor, and Tibet and China were constantly fighting. We were having wars with Tibet. Zorawar Singh actually claimed Ladakh. So considering that, that is how a civilizational state operates. We may disagree with the Chinese style of working. Maybe it doesn't work for us. Democracy works for us better. But you have to ask yourself, what is your priority? Long-term security. Long-term civilizational security. It is not an abstract concept which is the pet peeve of the wine-tasting elites of Latins. It has a real consequence, because when demographics change, you lose territory, cession of culture, then you realize they're outside your gated communities.
So people in the gated community say, हमने थोड़ी ना ठेका ले रखा है. If Hindus get attacked in Canada, if Hindus get attacked in San Francisco, if Hindu children are under threat in universities, in Ivy League colleges, if Hindus of Bangladesh, हमने कौन सा ठेका ले रखा है of looking after their welfare?
And which is why I use the word heroes at the outset. कम्युनिटी आइडेंटिटी और कम्युनिटी का वैल्यू आपको तब तक नहीं पता चलेगा जब तक ये प्रॉब्लम जो है आपके घर के बाहर खड़ा नहीं हो जाता है. तब समझ में आएगा. ये जितने भी आपके भाड़े के सिक्योरिटी गार्ड से भाग जाएंगे. Secular state will have its secular considerations when it comes to protection of Hindus. And usually it's not in our favor. Then you'll realize, अच्छा तो हमारे लिए खड़ा होने वाला बचाने वाला तो कोई यहाँ पे रहा
Why
ही
are you
नहीं.
saying secular, it's not in our favor? Why?
Because by and large, if the perpetrator happens to be a non-Hindu, there are considerations that go into the decision-making process, even if it is restoration of law and order. If the perpetrator happens to be a Hindu or an alleged Hindu, they suddenly find their masculinity. Yes. How many instances of this do you want across the history of independent India, not Bharat? So, those who think like that, Mubarak ho bhai. Your myopia will come back to haunt you at some point.
It hasn't.
Well, if it hasn't, I might as well bat for those who realize the value of it. I don't bat for those who don't understand the value of it. I don't claim to be the sole voice or whatever it is. But if at all there is a cross-section of the community which deserves compassion, help, it is this segment.
Do subscribe to the ANI Clips channel to get shorter versions of this podcast. Click here to watch the full episode.